Going to have some fun with some superlatives here on the show. Going to ask you a couple questions, and I'll give my answers. Also want to get yours as well, and we'll see if we can feel like we found, because I loved our last segment breaking down the NFC North. We feel like we kind of feel like how we want to attack it. We both like the Packers week 1 against Detroit. They lose that game, we'll turn around, we'll bet the Packers to win the division at an even better price than plus 275. So let me ask you this. Every year in the NFL, just about, we got a team that goes worst to first, right? Team that was last place in their division the year before, they end up winning the division that next year. Any teams that you think can accomplish that in this upcoming NFL season?
Well, the funny thing is, so I've done research on this for several years now. It's actually one of the first paragraphs of my, preseason betting guide that I always write up, mostly for myself, not really for anyone else, just for my own personal joy and comfort. It did happen last year, right? We had Patriots, Bengals, Titans, Chargers, Commanders, Bears, Panthers, Cardinals. Now, the Commanders were obviously worst to almost first, worst to NFC Championship game. I think that's pretty commendable, but it was obviously the Eagles that did win the division. So now it's 19 out of the last 22 years. I mean, still, even the fact that it didn't happen last year, it's still almost every year. You do see this happen. So your options this year: Patriots, Browns, Titans, Raiders, Giants, Bears, Saints, Niners. I think Niners is the obvious choice.
Yes.
First of all, they're favored to win the division. So it's like, well, all right. Well, obviously they would be your most obvious choice. But I think you mentioned it. It was either you or another. I think it might have been you. It might have been Femi. The AFC South very much up for grabs. I think we were talking about the Texans yesterday.
Yep. Uh-huh.
The Titans, obviously with a rookie quarterback, it's Schrodinger's cat. Like, we don't know what Cam Ward is. He could be Jaden Daniels. He could be something else. Could be something way down there on the spectrum. If he's Jaden Daniels, then yeah, I would say the Titans at least have a puncher's chance to make the playoffs and to maybe compete in a division that is not as competitive as some of the others in the NFL. But I think the obvious answer is Niners.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they're favored, right, to win the division.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I did have the Titans written down, though, right? Everybody's going to pick the Niners, and maybe they do it. If you were looking, though, for a true conventional team that came in last and they're still, favored to finish in last place, I think it would be the Titans. Just the success that we have seen recently with some of the top quarterbacks, Stroud, Daniels taking over year 1, leading their teams to the postseason. I think Cam Ward's going to be a good NFL player. I don't think he's going to be as good as those two, but I think he's going to be good. But you said it, Jared. For me, it's really about the division and kind of the rest of those teams. So if it's not San Francisco, I would agree with you. I would go with the Titans as a team to look at to go worst to first. All right, how about on the flip side, Jared? Who's the team that you see that was first last year that you think could be the worst this upcoming year?
Well, it's kind of funny. So I've done a lot of research on this over the years. Teams that exceed their win total by at least 2 games the prior year, which for the most part, teams that win the division are going over their win total. I'm sure there's exceptions, but I think on average, teams that go over their win total, those are the teams that are winning the division. On average, the next year, they go under their win total more often than not. About 42% of the time, they'll go over in back-to-back years after exceeding it by 2 wins or more the prior year. So the point is, right, you have a great year, you go over your win total by 2, 3, 4, 5 wins, that price goes up, and then the next season you're a sell high candidate. There are a couple teams on this list that do intrigue me. I think Washington, and I know that they weren't first last year, but I think Washington just in general is a team based off of the division and how many games they won last year and the schedule that I would be looking to maybe be a sell high component. But they weren't a first place team, so they're not really in the official category. I guess Detroit.
That's what I had written down.
I think they're right. I think because I think this is a harder category to peg because typically teams that win the division are so consistently good that it's hard to go from first to last. You obviously sometimes see regression,
right?
But because of the coaching situation and the schedule where we mentioned, yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if the Lions were 7-9 or 7-10, I guess. And then the rest of the division, Minnesota, Green Bay, Chicago, kind of hovering in that range. And obviously one of the teams would be a first place team. But those teams won so many games in that division last year. I would not be shocked if Detroit came crashing back down to earth this year.
Their win total was 10.5 last year, Jared. They won 15 games, lose both coordinators. Schedule, like you said, much more difficult, more outside games. And the division is probably going to be as good, right? Minnesota maybe won't be as good. The Bears should be much better. Packers should be as good, if not better. So I agree with you. Like you said, I mean, you're dealing with teams like the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, Like we know the Eagles, we know these teams aren't going to finish in last. So if you had to pick one, I think Houston would probably be the pick that maybe people would look at, sure. Maybe the Rams as well. But I'm with you. I think the Lions would be the team that I would look at going from first to worst. All right, how about these next two? The first one we're going to start. Which team this upcoming NFL season do you think is going to be the best team against the spread?
See, this is one of those situations where I look at how many times a team is underdogs in a season. Because, typically teams that are big underdogs are a little, they're obviously bad teams, but the games tend to be closer than what the market predicts. And like Detroit was a great example of that. When Detroit was really bad, even when they were losing games, they still were covering like every single week. So if you look at this year, the Giants are dogs in 16 games. The Browns are dogs in 16 games. The Saints are dogs in 16 games. You get the Jets are dogs in 15 games. Tennessee, 15 games. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if one of those 5 teams, I think the Jets, maybe this is my hometown bias speaking, but I think the Jets would be an interesting candidate there because if Justin Fields performs well, I think the only thing missing from that team is their quarterback. Like, that team's ready to roll, except for the fact that they have no idea who's playing quarterback. So if they get a plus performance from Justin Fields, same thing with the Giants, especially after what they've done defensively over the last couple of years. I think their defense is ready to roll, and I think the Jets' defense is ready to roll too. I would say those are the 2 teams that I would target. Cleveland, I don't know. Maybe because their defense is also pretty solid, but they play in a really tough division with a really tough schedule. I think Tennessee's kind of in that boat too, but a lot of volatility with Cam Ward. Could be the best, could be the worst. I think I'll go Jets. I think I'll go Jets to have a better ATS record than expected just because of how many times they're an underdog.
Yeah, they were 6-11 last year, ATS, Jerry. They were the 5th worst in the NFL, so certainly could be a good option there. The 3 best teams against the number last year, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Lions. So probably would stay away from those teams as being the best teams again against the spread. I'm going to go with the Seahawks as my pick. And it's because I love Mike McDonald as a coach. I mean, when he was the defensive coordinator in Baltimore, I thought he's a genius. So year 2 of him, I think on defense they're going to be much better. And again, like the market on Seattle, right? In like a mini rebuild this offseason, getting rid of Geno, getting rid of Metcalf. I understand they brought in Darnold. They made some additions through the draft. But I think with kind of the ascension of certainly San Francisco getting healthy, favored to win it, Seattle or the Rams being looked at as a team that can contend, I think we're all kind of forgetting about Seattle, and I think they could be a team that can win people a lot of money this season. So I would look at the Seahawks potentially as being a team that is the best against the spread record in the NFL. Jared, what about on the flip side? Who's the team that you think could be the worst against the spread team in the NFL?
I think it'll be one of the teams that was above 500 this year in the ATS. Like, I think that's the first place you look, is like take the top 10 teams ATS and try to figure out which one of them is going to be overpriced this year. Detroit has to be at the top of the list. I think Washington is another one that had a really good ATS season last year. They were dogs in a ton of games, obviously. They're not going to be dogs in a ton of games this year. They're going to be favored in a lot more of those games. They have a really tough schedule. They have to face 3 teams coming off of a bye this year. And all 3 of those games, they're favored in all 3 games, which means maybe they shouldn't be as big of a favorite in those games as the market is telling you right now, because we know, especially later in the year, teams coming off the bye, the rest does have an impact. So I think those would be my 2 answers. Detroit, obviously, because they've just been so good against the number the last 3 years under Dan Campbell, you would expect some natural regression. And Washington, just because of the semantics of the schedule being a worse to first team or being a worse team to now getting almost a second place schedule, and just the overall difficulty of their schedule, I'd say the Commanders would be at the top of the list too.
think both are good options. The team I actually went with was a team that was 7-9-1 against the spread last season. So
interesting.
Under 50%. But Jared, the key is that last year they weren't favored in any games. And this year they're favored in 11 of them, and that's the New England Patriots. So
yes,
I am fading the fact that everybody's just buying in on the Patriots. People seem to think that Drake May is like the future of New England and that he's going to live up to the I'm not so sure. It's not that I don't think he doesn't have the potential to be really, really good. I'm just not there yet. And I think the market is to an extent. Certainly Vrabel has shown that he can be a good head coach in this league. They've made some additions in the offseason. I'm just not willing to make that jump yet with New England. This team was favored in 0 games last year. Now we're going to make them favorites in 11 games. That's a team I'm looking to fade against the numbers. So New England would be my pick, ATS. All right, Jared, we're excited for this one. Coach most likely to be fired first this upcoming season. We were talking about it off air, and we're like, probably Dable's going to be the popular choice that a lot of people are going to look to. And then I told you, I know who I'm going with. And you said that you had a guy that you like, too, that you're going with. Ready? So on the count of 3, we'll both say the quarterback or the head coach that we think is going to get fired first this upcoming season. 1, 2, 3. Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel. Yes.
Dude, absolutely.
So easy. So easy.
I
think it's just so obvious because he's just like, and I don't want to use like physical traits to like classify something that you need your brain for, but at some point you need to be like a tough coach. Like to me, like Dan Campbell exudes that. Mike McDaniel just looks like such a wimp on the sidelines. He's there. It's 20 degrees in Kansas City, and he's like shivering. And it's just, I think the men of football don't respond to that. And eventually, if the offensive guru-ness is not effective, you need toughness. And I just don't think he exudes that.
I completely agree, dude. I think Mike McDaniel, I have never been a fan of his. Everybody falls in love with the quirkiness and the fact that he's like this nerd NFL head coach. I think he's a really good offensive mind. I think his play calling is very solid as well.
He's an offensive coordinator. He's an offensive coordinator.
He is an offensive coordinator, Jared. Well said. There's a reason, though, that the Dolphins can never beat teams that are better than they are. And it's a reflection of their head coach. Like, he's just not he's not a head coach you're going to ever win anything with of significance. So if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm surprised they didn't move on from him this offseason. They're still holding on to this idea with him as their head coach and Tua and Waddle and Tyreek that they can make it work. It's not going to work. The Dolphins got big blow-up potential, Jared Smith. Like, that could be a team that I'm looking at betting like first overall pick market at some good odds.
Wow.
Not saying it's going to happen, but like if there's a team that we all think could be like decent this year that ends up being awful, I would probably look at the Dolphins being that team.
I don't hate it. Especially if Tua gets hurt, it could definitely fall off a cliff.
Exactly. So I'm looking at Mike McDaniel. Jared is as well. And then finally, Jared, love this one. Which team in week 1 do you think is most likely to screw everybody in their survivor pools? We all know it was Cincinnati last year, losing as big favorites to New England. As you look at the week 1 card this year, who's the team that you look at that you're like, a lot of people are going to be on them. I'm not going to be one of them.
The biggest favorite in week 1 is Denver at home to Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody knows what Cam Ward is. I know going to altitude's not easy, but that everyone's going to pick Denver in week 1. So that I would say that would be my first choice.
Jared, I really think the Saints are going to beat the Cardinals in week 1. And I have a feeling.
But that game is at home. It is in New Orleans. So
It is. But I have heard so many people that think the Saints are going to be the worst team in the NFL, which they absolutely can be. And that's what we all thought about New England last year, and New England won week 1. I mean,
and they still went under their win total.
I mean, you said we don't know what Cam Ward is. We don't know what Shuck is. We don't know what Kellen Moore is. And Superdome's still a tough place to play. I'd be afraid of the Arizona Cardinals.